she had it at Bell, but it's a church that they converted. But it's still a church, but they just converted it to be like a church slash party center too.
Okay.
So they were able to like remove all the pews, and then it was really kind of interesting. We all felt bad for drinking in the church or on church property,
Right.
really, because the reception was outside.
Uh huh.
So it was very interesting.
Did they still have the stained glass windows?
They did
Oh.
crosses and everything.
Oh, so yeah,
My niece
feels
was
really good, right? Shouldn't be cursing you.
The Utilities Committee meeting of September 3rd, 2024 is called to order. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members of the Utilities Committee, Eric Schaefer and Georgia Awig are here, as well as the chairman, Bruce Abens. Also in the audience is President of Council, Jason Jacobs, and Holly Swank, Martin DeVries, Tara Pete of the, help me out with your title, I'm sorry.
Director of Community Services.
Thank you. The mayor and finance director, April Wilkerson, and plus various other members. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes of January 17th, 2023, and the minutes of May 1st, 2023? Any objections, additions, comments? Seeing none, those minutes are approved. And on to new business. We're here to discuss a metering change within the city. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off a little bit unusual, and we're going to have Tara Pete please give us a presentation as to what we're actually looking at.
Well, good evening, and thank you for hearing our presentation this evening. There are two pieces of legislation that I wanted to begin with, 2024-89 and 2024-90. 2024-89 is contracting with utility metering solutions to be the project manager and installer on a mass meter project citywide. 2024-90 is the actual purchase of the infrastructure, the water meters through Badger Meter. We currently contract with Badger Meter now and use their water meter technology reading software. I am going to introduce Jacob and Mark from Badger Meter and Utility Metering Solutions to give you an in-depth presentation.
Thank you, Tara. And so Mark and I are going to kind of tag team this presentation a little bit, and we want this to be as interactive as possible. So if anybody has questions as we're going along, please let us know. But first and foremost, thank you to the council for letting us come and do this presentation. I want to thank the mayor, I want to thank April, and I want to thank Tara for all of the hard legwork that they did to get us to this point. They've really done an outstanding job of looking at the options that are out there and available and really trying to identify what is the best option for the citizens of North Ridgeville. So thank you to you guys for helping to get us to this point. Mark and I are going to do a little bit of a presentation, just brief overview on where we're at now and what the next steps are for the project. So I'm going to let Mark kind of talk a little bit about the background of what your system is now, where you're at, and kind of the need for why we need to do this meter changeout. So Mark.
Thank you for letting me present tonight. Mark Wright from Badger Meter. I have a little history, so I was your account manager for many years. 20 years in different roles and capacities. And we greatly appreciate your business. We provided your water meter systems, I think, for the last 20, 30 years. And back in 2009, so I'd like to just set the table of where we came from and where we're heading with the product. So back in 2009, we installed a system called Galaxy, and that is this type of system right here. So this connected to your water meter, and this unit right here is in the home, and this would send a signal once a day to a collector. And there's 9 collectors spread around the city now. And so then that signal would then come back here to the billing office, and we were able to get your reads from there. Well, over time, those gateways, those 9 collectors around town, they went through multiple upgrades. So we've had to upgrade those over the years, and finally we just met end of life for those collectors, where we can't even get the parts and pieces to repair anymore. And currently, I believe we're only operating 7 at capacity, which has led to right around 4,300, a various number each month of estimated bills for the residents. In the meantime, what we've done, starting back in 2019, 2020 when I met Tara, is that we transitioned over to a cellular endpoint. So with a new style meter, which is an ultrasonic meter, and then this unit right here is the same cellular card that's in your cell phones now, but all we're doing is sending a text message, but we're sending it 4 times a day. Much more data that we can pass on. So we've ended the need for these collectors, those 9 collectors. So everything comes to a cloud-based system, and I think right now we're around 2,400 cellular units in the system. So that's 2,400 residents that have the ability to have an app on their phone that if they do have a leak within 24 hours, it can send them a signal and let them know, or text message or email, and say, hey, you might want to investigate this. We think you may have a leak. So for the first time with this system, it was more of a reactive. You would call the resident, hey, you might have a leak, and then they would go investigate. That could be 30 days, 60 days old. Now we put the power to have that in the resident's hand, so they could be proactive and say, okay, I may want to do something about this. So 2,400 of your residents currently have that. The problem is that the failures, I don't want to call it failures, but the other Galaxy system that's slowly phasing out is failing faster than what we can install or what the utility can install without some help. So, and I think that's what UMS is going to present today, of how they can help us with our product, us Badger Meter supplying the product, and how we can eliminate those gateways, and then we can turn your whole utility into something where you can have more interaction. And I believe, Tara, you had a story, because we have the same system in Avon. So they're fully with the cellular unit and the ultrasonic meter, and you had a...
Yeah, so I was on vacation and I had a leak, and the notification went off on my phone. And I believe some of the council members have new meters and the Ion Water app. And so I called a friend that has a key to my house, and they shut the water off to the house. But if I didn't have that, I would have gone 7 days with my toilet, just the flusher got stuck, running, and we can't adjust for that in the utility office if you have a leak. We could do a payment plan, but we couldn't adjust for that. So it's an empowering tool for the resident. Right now, when we have leaks, we have a report, but unless it's something super substantial, it could be 50, 60 pages, and we don't have the time to call every individual resident unless it's something very large. So this definitely empowers the resident.
So who are those 2,400 that have it currently? I'm just curious, are those new homeowners or those?
They are new homes. They are people that we've seen estimated for 6 months in a row. We go in and change out their meter and upgrade to the new meter. We're trying to tackle the ones that have been estimating consistently.
So and with that 2,400, it's more, think of it like as in a shotgun. we're just trying to plug holes as they fail, or especially where the gateways have went down and we're not able to read that. So that'll be the first place or areas that we attack with the new system. But the software is already done. So we've already integrated with your billing system. That's done. It's just a matter of getting the hardware purchased from Badger Meter and then UMS with the installation and coordination of that and managing that project. So that's what we're here. How do we transition and go from kind of plugging these holes as the utility has the manpower or the lack of manpower to do that, and that's where we're at today. So I'll turn it over to Jacob, let him talk about his report.
I'll pause there real quick. Any other questions so far as we're moving through?
I have a comment.
Yes.
My grandson left my side spigot on. It was just dripping. And I got an order. He said it was doing less than 3 gallons.
Yeah.
So I immediately knew he didn't turn that off. I ran outside and turned it off. So it does alert you, even minimal leaks.
Yeah. And it's amazing how often between Tara's story and that one, I mean, there's so many times where we will get calls or the utility will get calls that, the flap on the toilet's stuck.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how quickly that adds up to usage.
Yeah, maybe you're gonna cover this, but how long is it gonna take to transition over?
Yep, well, I've got a slide to talk about that,
Okay.
but rough estimate, anywhere between 10 to 12 months, so right around a year time frame. Tara keeps beating me up to see if we can get that a little bit quicker. We will do our absolute best to do it as quickly as possible. We want to do it as quickly as possible for you guys. The big question mark is always, because we're dealing with primarily inside sets in people's homes, so it's really always a question of scheduling appointments and getting inside people's homes, and that's where some of the variability can come in. But right around a year, I think, would be a good estimate for it.
I have another question.
Yes.
I see in a lot of Facebook groups people complaining about these meters and their Wi-Fi dangerous. What can we say to people that eases that?
Yeah, and Mark can maybe hit on this a little bit better than I can, but I think the reality is the level of transmission, RF transmission, is so minimal. I mean, it's a fraction of what you have if you hold your cell phone up to your ear and make a call. It's a fraction of what you have if you run the microwave or if you have even wireless internet. I mean, it's just a very, very small fraction of what that is. There's been extensive studies, and we can forward you some of those, but there's been extensive studies done in the space about how there is zero impact to health with the wireless meters and the wireless transmitters. I think it's really just about having all that information at your disposal so that you can communicate that. And part of what we'll do with the mass meter rollout is a customer engagement piece as well, so a community outreach piece. So we will be proactively reaching out to the community to let them know, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, here's what you can expect, here's some frequently asked questions, and a lot of that also includes the health impacts as well. So we find that when we do that, and we proactively communicate with your constituents, it tends to make the project go much smoother. Mark, I don't know if you want to.
I just want to add that we're sending 4 signals a day. 3 are controlled by the utility, 1 is set by Badger Meter, but those are only on for a second and a half. So it's a text message. It's just a quick data transfer. So it's not a long extended signal.
So Mark's already touched a little bit on Badger and how they've been an existing vendor for the city of North Ridgeville for quite some time. Really a leading manufacturer in the water meter space. They've been around since 1905, so they've got a long track record of providing high quality meters and technology to utilities. And as Mark mentioned, the software, the Beacon software, is already integrated with all of your existing systems within the city here. So that's a big plus whenever you're doing these technology upgrades. The software integration can tend to be where you see a little bit of sticking points. That piece has already been handled with Badger. we're a nationwide installer, so we install all over the country. But just in Ohio, in the last 3 years, we've done over 200,000 meter installations. So we have a lot of experience doing this, and we have a lot of experience with exactly what we're talking about here, which is in-home meter changeout. So getting into the house in order to do that changeout. So you'd asked a little bit about the transition cost and timeline. Why did that change? So I don't know why that's not updating, but we can just talk to it. So around about a year for the change out, between 10 to 12 months. The total project cost, and I think April's going to touch on this a little bit in her part of the presentation, but right around 8.8 million. That includes the meter portion of it plus the services portion on our side, which would include the installation, project management, quality checks, things like that. So that'll be spread out over that 10 to 12 month period. So probably, just to do the integration piece, maybe a couple $100,000 in this year, depending on when the contracts get signed and all of that. And then the bulk of the cost would then come in the next year. So, but I think April's gonna touch on that. So I'm not gonna get too far into that. And then, yeah, I don't know why it's not updating, but we have a slide here that kind of shows the breakdown of the cost between the product side of it and the installation services side of it. Again, I won't go into too much detail on that, but we also have built into the budget some what we call contingency funds, and that allows us to just plan for any unexpected issues. So if we were to, let's say, get into a home and we need to do some repiping because their pipes are corroded or things like that, rather than having to call the city to come out and do that while we're there, we can just go ahead and make that repair in consultation with the city and save that return trip to get back out there. So that's the nice thing about how we've got the project laid out, is it gives you the flexibility to solve some of those issues as they come up, which can shorten the duration of the change out. And the nice thing about that contingency money is that it's not like a use it or lose it type of thing, right? If we don't use that entire contingency budget, then that would just flow back to you guys. So I'll pause there. Any questions? Yes.
Privacy.
Yes.
How private is this data? And will I get bombarded with even more junk mail than I get now? Also, when you talk about repairing pipes, who is on the hook for paying for that?
Yeah, and so I'll let Tara kind of speak to the who's on the hook, but typically it depends a little bit on where the repair happens, right? So the utility, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the utility would own up to the meter.
Yes, the city is responsible only for the meter.
Yep, and then
Pipes are on the
anything
resident.
after that going into the resident's home, they would be responsible for. And in terms of privacy, Mark can talk a little bit about the privacy on the beacon data side, but all of that is secured. Badger uses SOC 2 ISO 27001 certification, so that's the same level of privacy requirements that financial institutions have to hold personally identifiable information. With the data transfer that we have, we don't really have any personally identifiable information. All that kind of lives in the billing system. So any data that's coming back through the meter system, or any data that we have in terms of change out information, so like address, customer number, things like that, all of that is secured within our software system, and then we destroy all that data immediately after the project's completed. So we don't.
I was
hold
thinking
any of
more
that
about
data.
mailing lists, because I maybe 2 or 3 times a month I'm getting junk mail from the gas company offering insurance to insure the line because they tell me the city doesn't cover it. Am I going to get bombarded with junk mail in this system?
The only mail that you're going to get from us is a mailer that would go out informing the resident of the change out, what they should expect, where they can call to make a appointment to do the change out. If we don't get a response, then we'll send a second mailer, but that's the only mail that you would get from UMS. And again, we don't sell any of that data. We don't keep any of that data. All the address information is removed from our system, deleted from our system as soon as the project is complete.
Question, the information that's sent back to the city from the meter, is that just a one-way process? Or can the city talk back to that meter?
Yeah, good question. So, and again, Mark, I'll let you kind of speak a little bit more to the technical piece on the endpoint, but it's a two-way communication. So the way it works is the cellular endpoint will send a signal to the cellular network, and then it will receive a confirmation that, yes, I received your information, and so you can communicate back to the endpoint. Now, the functionality of what you can communicate back is fairly narrow. You know, it's not like you can program it to a different type of meter or anything like that. It's really more of just I'm sending my data, and yes, I got a confirmation that I received that data. Mark, I don't know if you want to add to that.
I just touched it. One will update firmware consistently with the software, so we'll always update and talk to the endpoint. And then also we do have a style of meter that can be a reduction in flow, so we can reduce the flow for non-payment, and that's where we would talk to that meter, tell it what to do, and so on. But I don't know if that's, we're not really looking at that.
If you have non-payment, we shut the water off.
Yep. And then one point on the public, the signal that comes back or the networks that we use, that's on a private network. We don't use the public network from any of our cellular carriers. So that never touches the public network.
So the system could be hacked theoretically and create some havoc for our citizens and our water department.
So theoretically, any system could be
Right.
hacked. Yes.
Right.
Now, let's say hypothetically the system was hacked. To Mark's point, the data is never touching the public network. So one, it would be very difficult to hack. But two, even if they did hack the data, the only information they're going to receive from that endpoint is the meter number, the endpoint number, the interval reading data, whether there's a leak. There's no customer data that's passed back and forth in that meter, or back and forth in that transmission. So could it be hacked? Theoretically, yes. What would be the practical impact if it was? Very minimal, because there's no personally identifiable information that's getting passed back through there.
It goes for just about any system of that nature.
Absolutely. Yep.
I have a question.
Yes.
So if the Wi-Fi towers and cell towers are down, does that eliminate the meters from shooting out?
Yeah, good question. So if a cell tower would go down for whatever reason, right, whether it's weather related or whether it just stops functioning, so 2 points. One, most of these endpoints will be able to communicate to multiple cell towers. So it's not like they have a single point of failure. There's a lot of redundancy that's built into that system. So if one cell tower were to go down, typically most of the meters can communicate to another cell tower. If a cell tower goes down and a meter can't communicate to another cell tower, the endpoint stores all of the data locally on the transmitter itself. So when that cell tower comes back up, it's going to communicate all of that data because remember, it gets a communication that says, yes, I received that transmission. If it doesn't get that communication, it's going to store that data. And then as soon as it reconnects to the cellular network, you'll get all of that data from when the cell tower went down. So you're not losing any of that data if the cell tower were to go down. And the third point, the cellular networks or cellular providers in general typically have there's a standard in the industry called the 3GPP standard, but there's requirements on the network uptime that they have to have. And so if a cell tower does go down, they either fix it immediately or they'll roll out temporary cell towers to get that transmission. Mark, I don't know if you want.
All covered.
Thank you. Sorry, I stole your thunder there a little bit.
The other question I would have, the personnel who will be installing this, I'm
Yes.
assuming they're vetted?
Yeah, so
Very
every
closely?
every installer goes through a background check, criminal check, drug screening, alcohol screening, all of that. Every installer that we hire goes through that entire process. They will all have ID badges that identify them as employees of UMS. We typically will carry a letter that we get from the city that says, hey, we've authorized UMS to do these changeouts on our behalf, so that the customer knows, the resident knows that it's not just a random person showing up. So they go through extensive screening for that.
Any additional questions?
I have a question regarding, just for clarification on our existing system. Back at the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned there were 9 collectors throughout the city. And it's those collectors that are failing that's kind of prompting this whole project. Is that accurate?
Essentially, yes.
So there's no other collectors out there that can be installed that will work with our existing Galaxy meters that we have all throughout the city?
Unfortunately, no. As Mark mentioned at the beginning, that system has end of lifed, and so the issue is getting any sort of replacement parts or components for that system.
Were those 9 collectors also installed in 2009?
I believe so. Yes.
They're actually a refresh. They were installed, because we had original ones, and I think they reinstalled it 2017
So
was
those
the
9
last round of collectors being upgraded. So, and they do come with a 1-year warranty because they're exposed to it's basically you put a computer up in a tower, but, so that was the last upgrade.
Okay. I was just thinking back, 2009, that's 15 years ago. Is that a typical lifespan for a water meter system and the collectors?
It's hard. I'll answer. Mark might not like my answer here, but it's hard to say typical because there's a lot of things that kind of go into how long a system stays deployed. But as I mentioned, we do installations all over the country. I would say typically we see utilities changing out their systems every 12 to 14 years for a number of reasons, right? It's not always because the technology has end of life. So I would say you guys are right on par, if not maybe doing a little bit better than most utilities in terms of longevity for your system.
I have to admit, I find the fact that a 15-year-old system and you can't find parts for it anymore, I find that a little disturbing.
Yeah, and it's one of those strange things that as we kind of, and I've been in the industry for about 15 years. I know it doesn't look like it, but I've been in the industry for about 15 years, and as we kind of introduce more technology into the system, the technology is great and it allows you to take advantage of a lot of things that you haven't been able to take advantage of before. But because now you have more electronic components and you have more parts and pieces that go into that, I mean, it's to Mark's point, it's like putting a computer up on a tower, and I mean, I don't know how long everybody's had their computer for, but you get to about 4 or 5 years and you can tell it's time to get a new one. So, as you kind of introduce that technology into the system, invariably you get a little bit more of that kind of turnover with the technology piece of it.
Any further comments, questions?
So if you go in, a technician goes in and decides the pipe needs to be fixed, you fix it, right?
So we would work in consultation with the city and the utility department.
know.
Typically,
I have
what we
no
do
idea.
is we work with them ahead of time and say, okay, here's the agreed upon list of things that if we encounter this when we're doing a change out, we have your permission to go ahead and change. If it's something that it's a little bit borderline, we're not sure, while we're there, we'll call Tara or we'll call somebody in the utility department and say, hey, this is what we're seeing. we can fix it. Would you like us to fix it, or would you like us to, send it back to you guys and have you come out and fix it? So we'll work very closely with you guys to determine what that process looks like.
Can I fix it myself?
What's that?
Can I fix it myself?
It depends on what it is. But I mean, if
I'm a
we-
certified arc welder.
Can
so
I
can work
interrupt
on
for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Eric. This has nothing to do with the meters and the meter project. Your water pipes are a completely different topic. I'm not really sure why we're focused on that.
Well, he indicated that if one of his installers detected something, they would fix it. And
Well, it would
No,
only
no.
it would only be if it was something that was prohibiting us from completing the installation. So
Okay.
if it was an issue that allowed us to not be able to do the installation, then but if we notice that you've got a leaky pipe somewhere in your basement, I mean, obviously we'll notify the homeowner that, hey, you've got a leak down here, but that's not something that we would do unless it prohibited us from doing the installation.
But just as a point of clarification for you, we've encountered that now when we go in and remove a dead meter where the meter is leaking at the connection, or there's something extraordinary there. We task the homeowner with contracting with a plumber because the city per ordinance is responsible for that meter. After the meter, that is not the city's responsibility. And we work with the homeowner so they get the issue fixed, they call us, we come out, we install the meter, and we're done.
are there any more slides?
There were, but they don't seem to be updating. But we covered everything verbally. So, and we can certainly share this slide deck with you guys if you'd
You're
like.
selling software, but your PowerPoint doesn't update.
Well, it's updating on my end. It's just not coming up on the screen here.
I have a question.
Yes.
In terms of the process of doing this, do you like go from east to west or north to south or just random, or how's it
Yeah,
done?
so we typically will do it kind of in clusters, right? And again, because we need to get appointments scheduled, if these were all outside, we would just go down the street and change every single one out in a row, right? But because they're all inside people's homes, what we do is we'll focus on certain geographic areas within the city. We'll schedule appointments for that area, and then we'll do as many of those as we can get appointments scheduled for, complete that section, and then we'll move on to the next one. So it's kind of well thought out in terms of where we're going. And again, we work very closely with the utility group to plan out what that looks like, and also to be cognizant of blackout dates for billing, because we don't want to be in there changing a meter out when you guys have to bill. So when you guys are sending out bills, we'll kind of pause on the installs at that point and then resume once that gets done.
We've also had some discussions about trying to address the areas that are being estimated first, as opposed to any of the other areas. Unfortunately, though, sometimes they're all over the place.
That was my next question. Those 2,400, is that spread all through the city, or is there maybe a concentration of a majority of them?
So a lot of them are, well, to that point, some of the new construction areas, you would probably see a cluster there because we're using these E-Series meters. But in terms of trying to pinpoint like this quadrant of the city's estimating, we see sometimes it'll estimate 3-4 months, and then all of a sudden we'll get a reading because it picked up off of one of the gateways. And then it'll estimate another 4 months. So after billing, I have my staff study the estimation report to see who's 3, 4, 5 months estimated. Let's schedule an appointment to change them out. Because it's been really challenging. This is the first summer that I have deduct meters estimating, and the system estimates at 0. So somebody put their lawn in. I've had several of these calls. They didn't get the sewer deduction, so they had a $1,200 water bill with no sewer deduction. And so then I have to go in and hope that I got a reading, and then manually change it, correct their bill, and then the following month's billing, I have to go back and manipulate the system so it doesn't double credit them when it finally pulls a reading. It's a lot.
Now, question I would have, another one is, the meter that was recently put into my home, I want to say it was within the last year. My wife says no, more like 2-3 years ago.
Yep. You will keep that meter.
I will keep that meter. That
You are-
fits,
That's part of the 2,400.
Yep.
Yep.
okay.
Through the chair, how long is the projected timeline to complete this project, you said?
Around about a year, so 10 to 12 months.
Now, if there's some problems down the road, does UMS stay on, or do you train our people how to address those problems?
Yeah, so we would train the utility staff as we're going. You mean like if there's problems where you've got to change out another meter or something like that? Yeah. So and your guys' staff is already doing a lot of that. So you're already very familiar with the change out process. We're really here to more augment your staff to help you complete this project in a shorter, condensed time frame. Because to Tara's earlier point, I think you guys have been doing this and you've been doing a good job of kind of changing out where the meters have been failing. There's just not enough resources to do it in a short enough time period.
Thank you.
And just to kind of run a little bit longer with that, right now when we're installing the new technology, sometimes a endpoint isn't providing us readings and there's something wrong with it. Now we've purchased them within the last 2 years. We shipped them back to Badger Meter and they send us a new one because they're covered 100% for 10 years. And then the coverage goes 70, 65, 60 up until the 20-year mark. And then after that, it's out of warranty.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So Tara, do you remember that one time that my app told me we used 1 trillion gallons of water? Was that a software issue? Was that a weird glitch?
I have no idea.
Do you remember that?
I remember you and I discussing a lot about how did I use this much water?
More water than what Lake Erie even holds? My bill was never off, but it did. The app told me we used 1 trillion gallons.
We had a gentleman call today saying, I see on my bill I have a reading, but when I go to my Ion Water app, it's showing that there are no readings. So I had the gentleman uninstall the application and reload, and he was fine. My thought is that's probably like any application. I've had to delete it off my phone and reload, and then it seems to be working correctly.
Yeah.
Or update. Do they require updates?
Not on our side. I imagine
We update automatically.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just shows up as an update.
But it's a good point, though, with projects of this size and this scale, one of the most important parts is making sure the data gets into your billing system correctly so that you don't have issues where, you have a mismatch between what the meter's saying and what you're getting back on the endpoint. And so that's an area that we focus on a lot, is making sure that the data that we're putting into the billing system is 100% accurate.
Yeah, because we didn't get billed for 1 trillion gallons.
Yeah.
it's a good thing.
You
So it
just
would be
got
quite the payment plan.
you just got to tell your child to make sure the faucet's turned off.
This was a couple of years ago.
All right, okay. I guess what we're going to do next is go on to April's presentation.
Is there any other questions for Mark or Jacob?
I think we pretty well covered it.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. We appreciate your time.
Before we can do anything further, we need to hear from our finance person as to what this is all going to cost and how we're going to recover these costs. Please state your name.
For the record, this is April Wilkerson, the Finance Director.
What's that? I did.
Our software's not as updated.
Can you update this too?
Yeah.
That'll
Hopefully.
be in the contingency bucket.
Okay. right there. Okay. So before I get started, I do want to let you know that we did a lot of background research. We've looked at grants, loans, all things available to the city to help finance this project. And I'm sad to report that we missed the deadline for OWDA. We weren't even in discussions of this project at that time. So unfortunately, that is unavailable to us for this project. But I do want you to know that we took all resources into consideration when looking at the cost and how we would be able to finance this. How do you go to the next slide? Did it go? Okay. I didn't know if you were doing it. Okay. All right. So as we discussed, the project rounded is $8.8 million. If you recall, we have ARPA grant money that we have yet to expend, and we were looking for a project that would benefit the city and our residents for those dollars. So we are proposing that we apply the $3.8 million to this project and then finance the remaining $5 million. So unfortunately, going to market for a bond, $8.8 million isn't quite high enough. So it would behoove the city to apply the 3.8 to bring down our cost, and then I am proposing that we issue bond anticipation notes for the additional $5 million. So the way bond anticipation notes work is every year we will do something that is called rolling the debt, and I'm proposing that we pay this off within a 5-year period. And we've done this before with issues that far exceed $5 million. So don't get apprehensive on the sticker shock here, but we've done this before. Back in 2019, we went down this route and we paid off nearly $8 million in bond anticipation notes over a period of time, with pulling money down from different resources and paying large principal payments over that 5-year period. So it's very doable. The city's done it before, so it is an advantageous option for us. So where is that money going to come from? So one of the pieces of legislation before council was to establish a water meter service fund and to establish a per meter per month charge that we would begin charging our residents in January, that would not only cover the cost of, some of the cost of this program, but also set us up for the future. So as discussed by our Mark and Jacob earlier, the estimated life of our meters and our software is about anywhere from 10 to 15 years. So we will be in this position again in the future as technology changes, as meters need to be upgraded. We don't want to be in a position where we can't upgrade our system again, or we will have to, if this project is costing us $8.8 million today, we can only imagine what 10 years of inflation will do to that cost. So I am proposing that we set up a meter service fee that we begin collecting now that will allow us to not only assist in paying down our current debt service over the next 5 years, but also put us on the road to financing this project when these meters come to their end of life. So on an annual basis, that revenue that will be generated will be about $714,000. Over the 5-year period, I am proposing that the meter service fund will pay $3.4 million of our total costs, and the water operations fund will pay $2.3 million of these, $2.350 of these costs for this project. And so I gave you a look at the, each of the fund balances. They're a little difficult to see, so I apologize for that, but I'll read them for you. So this is a snapshot of what the water meter service fund will look like. We anticipate generating about $714,000 a year. Now, that will fluctuate as new customers are coming on, you know, that revenue I would anticipate that revenue to increase, but I'm just going to give you a snapshot of what we know today. You know, we have homes coming in, and so those we would anticipate to increase. So as you see, about the middle of the page, there's some transfers out budgeted over the next 5 years. In 2025, I'm anticipating a transfer out of just $500,000, and that is because we would anticipate issuing the bond anticipation notes probably in October or November if the committee recommends this back to council for approval and council chooses to approve. We would want to get those dollars into our coffers quickly so that the city can sign all the contract agreements to get the project going. So that would mean that the first payment would be due in November, so we would only use the collections through October, so it's slightly smaller than what the future years. In 2026, we would make that up for that by dedicating $800,000 out of this fund, and then in the 3 subsequent years, I'm anticipating $700,000 out of the fund. So should the revenues increase, then our dedication to the debt service can increase, and we'll take less money from the water operation fund. But this is what we anticipate happening today. This is the water fund, your water operation fund. I want to draw your attention to a couple things. So the 2024 budget, our end of year estimate, we're ending our fund balance at about $4.6 million. So we know that we can't pay cash for this project. We have to do some sort of financing of this. And we also know that we don't have loans or bonds available to us. So we know that our issue amount is too low for bonds over a 10-year period. So we know that the bonds are probably our only option to get this going. So I wanted to draw your attention to that because this fund does not have a cash balance large enough to pay cash, okay? You will see the transfers out. I want to make note here that the water operation fund is always used to pay debt service and to pay for capital improvements. So we do transfers every year to accommodate debt service payments and to accommodate capital project needs for the upcoming year. So this is not out of the ordinary. We are doing this all the time. Over about the midway down of the sheet, you can see what the transfer outs are. These are the obligations that would come from the water fund, okay? And I gave you the other 2 current funds, which is the debt service fund. You will see in 2025, our obligations are set there. The retirements will come out of this fund, and the transfers in will go in, and you can see we still have a positive fund balance to carry us through well past through 29, but even past that point. And then the improvement fund, you can see the capital outlay coming in. We had capital outlay dollars already in 24, so I added the $8.8 million to that. You can see the note proceeds coming in this year, as well as the $3.8 million transfer for the ARPA dollars. And that into consideration, we don't have our improvement fund budget for the future years just yet. There is a study being done, but I did want to show you that this is another sustainable fund and what that would look like as the notes and the transfers come in. Any questions?
Is that $8.8 million just for the company to install it, or is that
No.
for?
That is the total cost of the project. That's for the meters as well as the installation.
Yeah, a couple of questions I have. As far as the charges are concerned, is there any difference between commercial versus residential would there be a surcharge for commercial operations versus residential?
Are you speaking of the water meter charge?
Yeah,
I
And-
think that we were gonna do a flat rate.
flat rate?
Flat rate.
And then also I was thinking, when we have to do hookups for sanitaries and things of that nature, it's a rather expensive operation. I'm just wondering, for new services, is it possible to charge a premium for new services in order to help cover these costs?
On a sanitary tap?
No, I'm just saying, that was an example that we do. I'm just wondering with water service, if it's possible to charge a premium for new services.
Like for new builds?
For new builds, whether it be commercial, residential, whatever.
Our code doesn't currently allow for that right now. That would be a code change.
Okay. All right,
What's
those
the
are my
reason?
questions.
What's the reason for doing that?
Just to help defray some of our costs and bring costs to our residents down a little bit.
You want to charge new people more to support the
For the installation,
existing people?
sure, because they're,
The new
we
people
do
have
it,
already.
we do it for the sanitary.
If I may through the chair, do we still charge when I bought my house, I had to pay like a $50 deposit?
We don't take deposits anymore.
Okay.
We still have deposits on the books that when they final their bill, sell their house, we apply that in the final bill.
Okay, so then those deposits are no longer done, then what happened to all that money?
Anytime you have a deposit on your books, that gets applied to the final bill or refunded to the resident who
So it's
paid
still
it.
there?
Only the ones who are currently still using our water service.
Can any of that funds be used? Or
No, because that's not our money.
it has to go
It's a
back to-
deposit, so that really belongs to the resident.
Gotcha.
I believe the code says if you timely paid your bill for 12 consecutive months,
Yes,
then the deposit is applied to your account,
that's true.
as if you paid cash or whatnot.
Will there be an opportunity to apply for grants in the future for this project?
Unlikely, because the project will have already started.
Could we defer the project for a year and then reapply for the grants we missed out on?
Well, I wouldn't recommend that because there's no guarantee that you'll get the grants or the loans, so you could find yourself in this same position again in a year. The city did apply for the OWDA grant this year, and we utilized it for the aeration system at French Creek. So we've done it before, but that's a 2-year process just to get through the grant application, all the studies, all the financial information, and then actually get the loan. So it would probably delay the project 2 years.
And no telling what inflation will
If
do
you get
to
it.
us.
Yes.
So it would come out in wash, if not a loss. If we were successful, but it doesn't matter. Any other questions?
How do you arrive at $350 for the monthly fee? What was the calculations used?
The calculation was simply what would cover the future debt service costs as closely as we could get it. So we originally went down the road of thinking about bonds and thinking about any future water projects or even sewer projects that we could wrap into this to issue bonds over a 10-year period. And so as we were going through that process, we were estimating, okay, how much would you need to cover debt service payment? It was actually higher than that. We brought it down because we were proposing going to the bond anticipation note.
And is it a forever fee?
Yes.
But to note, it is specifically for mass meter
Yes.
upgrade. It's not for anything else.
Yes, these dollars will go into a separate fund that will be solely used for this purpose. So nobody in the future will be able to say, if it was in the operations fund, you could use that money for anything. So we would develop a separate fund to be used solely for water meter replacement, so that it's protected for the future.
Same with the stormwater?
Yes, that's the same situation.
Speaking of which, are there any automatic increases at the end of the year for this 350?
No, we did not build anything in the ordinance. In fact, we would have to come back to council if we wanted to raise that fee.
I guess I'd like to tie this, your 350, into the proposal 2024-88. And I guess the question I would have to ask is, how much does the city pay at this point for credit card purchases?
Well, so let me talk about that
Okay.
legislation for a moment. The intention of that legislation was really citywide, not just for utilities. So we anticipate about $124,000 worth of savings by passing along the credit card fees to the residents just in utilities alone. But I do want to note that our intention is to do this citywide. We're already partially doing it in Mayor's Court. Years ago, they decided that depending on how you pay will depend on if you pay the fee or if the city eats the fee. So we're already doing it in certain areas of the city. I think earlier this year or late last year, council approved that to be done down in building. So we are proposing legislation for citywide for that to be done. And I will tell you, those costs are exorbitant. I would anticipate citywide, the city is paying probably $300,000 to $450,000 a year in credit card fees and in merchant service fees. Big chunks.
And how much does that translate to the individual customer?
Well, I believe it's about 2.95%.
I was going to say it's somewhere between 2 and 3%.
Yeah, which is standard. We did a full analysis of credit card fees. We had a merchant come in and do an analysis for us. Invoice Cloud did an analysis for us for the utility side of things, and that is 3% is about average.
Do we know what percentage of our customers pay by credit card?
I don't know, I mean, there are more credit card payers than there are EFT. But we anticipate that's going to change because EFT will be the free option.
Yes.
Is that an option in our current bill right now?
Everything's free.
Yes, but everything's free right now.
I just clicked the bottom drop down and it's my credit card. I never even paid attention.
Yeah, I have to admit, my wife does the bill paying, and she uses, as she said, electronic check.
That will, under this plan, that will be the free option. Certainly coming in, paying with cash, mailing a check, electronically doing an e-check, setting up auto pay with an e-check. The only time you're going to incur this fee is when you pay with a credit card, whether that be through the telephone line, at the window, or through auto pay. We'll pass along that interchange fee to the resident.
Not totally understanding it. Debit cards, would that be a free option?
No.
No. Okay. Very good. Any other questions, comments? The only comment I have at this point is the fact that we're looking at $3.50, and for most folks, if they're using credit cards at this point, that's another 3%. So we're looking at somewhere around a 5 to 6% increase in their water bill. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think my estimation is close. And our residents, of course, are being affected by inflation. We're going to hear complaints about that 5 to 6% increase, and that's the only way they can look at it. It's an increase. And that's something that we definitely have to consider. Am I against it? No, it's just one of those, call it the devil's advocate.
We understand that, and that is why we looked for ways to reduce this cost. By applying those ARPA dollars, this cost would have been double that amount. So that is why we went that route. We are always conscious of what this means to our residents. So we have constructed a plan with the most minimal effect that we can offer.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if you look at it another way, if you switch off of paying with a credit card and go to EFT, you'll be saving some money, And so it'll offset the charge that you'll be paying on a monthly basis for the meter.
Understand, what's also in the back of my mind is you read more and more stories where checking accounts are becoming a thing of the past.
Sure.
And so whether checking accounts will now become EFTs, I don't know.
Well, you can't have a debit card without a checking account, right? You have to have a checking account in order to have a debit card.
Yeah, you have to, I think you
So-
can have a savings account with them, but I'm not sure.
Mr. Banker?
As far as I know, you get the checking account tied to the debit card itself.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we also plan to work with Invoice Cloud to create a marketing campaign to get the word out to residents well in advance of implementation. By all means of communication we can, letting them know that this is coming and here are your options for free service without any sort of surcharge.
And believe me, I understood what you were saying, only because my personal finances, my wife's very good at transferring accounts all over the place, looking for the lowest interest rates. So I totally understand. Just, you're on a bigger scale than I am.
We're on a bigger scale. Not me personally.
Any other questions, comments?
This likely will reduce the number of people that pay with a credit card,
Most likely.
but nonetheless, the city probably will still.
But we'll still save money because the other payment options are cheaper than the credit card processing fees. So even the one we're picking up is less than that.
You know, the credit card processing fees that we will collect, are those shown in the numbers here as far as offsetting the?
No,
this
because
project?
those all run through the water operations fund. So there will be some offset. I just didn't want to quote it because we don't know how many people are going to elect to go to the free route. But we'll know more once we get this up and going and we have a year's worth of data we'll be able to tell you.
And Jason, Invoice Cloud, they've done this model in other municipalities in Ohio and outside the state. And I asked them to tell me a little bit about trends. They do see a reduction in credit cards, but eventually they go back up. Yeah,
People are willing to pay that for that convenience,
that or
perceived
points,
convenience.
I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. A lot
Sure.
of cards have points and, you know.
All of mine do.
All mine do too.
Well, as the old song stated, times are a-changing, so we have to change with them. So I guess my question is, do we have to pass on each and every one of these ordinances? Or can we do it in a group?
Your committee report should probably be a motion
For
for each one.
each one, okay. Well then, I'm looking for first one on 2024-88.
So the motion is to move it ahead to council, right?
Yep,
Okay, so I motion that the 2024-88 be moved to council.
do I hear a second?
Sure, second.
In favor, say yay.
Yay.
Yes.
Yay. Against? So passed. Okay, 2024-89.
I move that 2024-89 be moved ahead to council.
I'll second that. In favor? Say yay.
Yay.
Yay. Against?
No.
Measure passes 2-1. To be referred to council. 2024-90.
I make a motion that 2024-90 be moved to council for consideration.
I'll second that. All those in favor, say yay.
Yay.
Yay. Against? Nay?
No.
Measure passes 2-1. And 2024-91.
I'll move that 2024-91 be moved to council for consideration.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Yay.
Yay. Measure passes. Move to council. Are there any other measures for this committee? The meeting is adjourned.